Previously on Star Wars Factions. Early as the Galactic War escalated, a pact was made between the Rebellion and the Republic to help one another. One of the demands of the Republic was that the Rebels provide them with locations for future clone facilities. During the clone assault on Umbara, part of Captain Rex's squad had run into a suspicious-looking group of cloaked warriors who were affiliated to the Force. Captain Rex stared one of them, Darth Nihilus, right in the face. A secret deal made by the Zan Consortium and Grievous resulted in Silri heading down to Coruscant to search for a legendary rancor in the darkest depths of Coruscant. At the same time, Russell Maulder, chief detective of that very Coruscant district, received a case of 2 people missing. Initial searching did not result in much, but they had a lead on a Rhodian named Zeke, who Maulder had run in before. The forest moon of Endor. It was a place of ever-going conflict and small skirmishes between the rebels and the Galactic Empire, mainly due to its rough terrain with dense, thick forests. Though intel confirmed that the 2 main occupied factions were the Rebellion and the Empire, recently, clone activity had increased as well, as the rebels would provide and share space for cloning facilities. Its forests were perfect to hide right under their enemies' noses. It was one of the reasons why the rebels, vastly outnumbered here on Endor, had managed to hold out for so long. The rebels had multiple underground bunkers handed over to the clones to use as cloning facilities. The size of the facilities would obviously be smaller than their larger ones like the one on Kamino, but with their efficiency, they would still be able to create hundreds of clones each day. The rebels even lent some manpower in order to protect the bunkers they offered. The forests were a perfect environment to train the clone cadets as well, and prepare them for war to come in the near future. In order to keep the clone bunkers a secret from the Empire, the rebel officers agreed to create a bit of ruckus and lead the Empire away from the locations of the clones. Up until now, the main rebel base on Endor had not been discovered yet, but multiple Imperial outposts had been pinned down on the rebel side. Even convoy and resupply routes had been noted down on the map, and it was exactly one of those routes that the rebels would hit today. The rebel who would lead this operation would be Nihilus Zintar, a promising officer that had spent most of his military days on Endor. He had several successful operations already under his name, but the truth was that on Endor, massive engagements were often left out, meaning that Zintar had relatively seen less combat than his similar ranked allies elsewhere. Their intel got word that a small convoy of stormtroopers and light walkers were on its way to reinforce a small outpost far from the rebels' main base. Attacking this convoy and getting out of Dodge fast should hopefully lead the Empire to assume the rebels' main forces were in the wrong direction. A diversion. The rebels were outnumbered, but they had the importance of surprise on their side. They waited still in the bushes and tall grass as the ground shook from the ATSTs barging their way through the mud. On Zintar's signal, the mines on the pathway were set off, blasting the forward walkers to bits and leaving the rest of the troopers confused and in disarray. From both sides, parallel to the path, the rebels opened fire as the stormtroopers scrambled, their officers shouting orders to take cover amidst the chaos. A few rebels hurried to some of the static turrets to provide some more heavy fire towards the remaining walkers. But the problem was that they were now stationary targets, and a single blast by an ATST was enough to silence them. The few vehicles on the rebel side got in position as well to fire at the walkers to the front and blast them to pieces. Now there were only the ATSTs remaining at the rear, and they were giving the left flank a difficult time. One of the walkers managed to kill a lot of rebel soldiers before being destroyed itself by a lucky AT rocket. The attack happened so fast that many of the stormtroopers found themselves pinned down. The loss of men at the left flank did give them a bit more room to breathe, but the rebels on the opposite side made sure to keep the pressure on them at all times. Desperately, some of the stormtroopers hid behind the burning wrecks of the ATSTs before finally one of the officers gave the signal for surrender as he had his men lay down their weapons. Zintar was pleased. His men were able to capture a fair amount of Imperial captives. Though some of them were of lower rank, he was sure that at least one would contain some information on Imperial supply routes or schedules. To his surprise, the Imperial captives seemed very calm, confident even. When some of the rebels tried to intimidate the captives, they got an arrogant chuckle back. Then the ground suddenly shook. One of the stormtroopers opened his mouth. The Empire knew all along of a rebel presence in this province, but did not know its exact location. He also revealed that they realized that if an attack occurred on an Imperial convoy, chances were likely that they would not send forces from their main base. But if those forces were then attacked at their own outpost, the rebels would reveal themselves, as reinforcements would be sent from the main base. The Imperial stormtroopers and ATSTs were bait all along. The rebel distraction was countered by an Imperial one, and as Zintar started to realize what had happened, the ground continued to shake as something big was approaching. The clones faction would not be able to send in reinforcements, as they were officially not on the forest moon of Endor. Mass migration of clone troopers occurred as they had taken control of Utapau and its lower levels and now focused on the both Imperial-held and Umbaran-held territories on Umbara. But one clone, Captain Rex, who had seen his share of bloodshed on Umbara, was heading away from it all. He was to meet with Yoda, head of the Jedi Order, and Qui-Gon Jinn. It was rare for a clone to meet with the higher-ups who controlled the strings of the Republic, but Rex knew why his presence was requested. He was the one who stood face to face with that Sith. He was the one who could feel the power and strength that being possessed. It made Rex question if they were not fighting the wrong enemy. Clankers were a joke compared to them, and everyone had heard rumors of the strength and ferociousness of Lord Vader. But he was only one man, and this was an army of those people. He was on his way to Coruscant, and on Coruscant, things were happening behind the curtain. Chief Detective Maulder had promised to meet with his fellow officers Crone and Shariah, a female Twi'lek who joined their team 2 months ago. When the three had met, it did not take them long to find the shifty-looking Rodian amongst the people. When the Rodian Zeke noticed the officers, he looked hesitant. For a moment he wanted to run, but since he had run-ins with Maulder before, he knew that this would not solve anything. Russell calmed the Rodian down by saying that they were not here for him, but just wanted some information on the 2 missing people he had been spotted with. Zeke told Maulder that he had only been recently acquainted with Fletcher and Stamp, and that the 2 had started a potential, very profitable business company near here. A shady business, no doubt, Maulder thought, but Zeke saw it as an opportunity for him to start earning more and work his way up the ladder. Maulder inquired about the bar that had been seen. Zeke confirmed that they went for a drink that evening, but said they left early as Zeke wanted to introduce them to another bar where some more appropriate company could be found. Russell sighed, and knew what that meant. Zeke continued that it was here where they parted ways, as the two men had set their eyes on a pair of cute Twi'leks. Maulder thanked Zeke, and with Crone and Shariah at his side, they descended into the streets of Coruscant to find this shady establishment. They visited several bars and asked the local bartenders for a place that fitted the description given by Zeke. About an hour later, they had reached the location, and it was exactly what Maulder was expecting. A place for thugs and crooks to hang out and have free reign. A place where girls worked against their will, forced by having fled their district, planet, or for permit reasons. This was the purgatory that the elite never saw. Shariah was well aware of how her people were exploited in these parts of the city. It made her sick, but what made her even more sick were the high-grade bars on the well-established areas where Twi'lek females volunteered to be seen as nothing more than lust objects. Where these girls did not have a choice, they did, and they chose the easy way out, exchanging money for physical pleasure. It did not take long before some rowdy-smelling thug lay his hands on Shariah in an inappropriate place. Without a flinch, as if she was expecting it, she elbowed him in the face as he dropped down with blood spewing from his nose. It grew silent around her. "Anyone else?" she asked, threatening to anyone who had the same intentions. Maulder had walked up to the bar. He knew Shariah could handle herself. He informed about Fletcher and Stamp, and the barman said that indeed he saw two guys come in late fitting that description. They ordered a couple of drinks every now and then. He also said he saw them talk briefly to the guy sitting over there. The guy apparently was a soldier, serving as a gun for hire for the moment, as it was forced to flee his planet that was occupied by the Empire.